Upon seeing Lu Sheng, King couldn't contain her excitement. She closed her eyes and with a smile rushed towards her brother to give him a hug, praising him by saying that he looked great in the uniform. Lu Sheng began to observe her and his eyes filled with happiness, causing him to start smiling. He placed his hand on top of his sister's head, began to stroke it, saying that she had grown quite a bit and had become quite the young lady. King, who had her eyes closed, began to smile even more with joy, and she couldn't help but start to blush upon hearing her brother's compliments. Lu Sheng and King started to converse with each other, and the parents who were in front of the door of the house were left speechless and shocked at seeing Lu Sheng. The father's eyes filled with surprise. He didn't know if Lu Sheng was really their son. The mother was somewhat confused as she didn't know what was happening. Noticing their presence, Lu Sheng turned towards them and with a pleasant smile began to greet them with his hand. Xie Pingnan entered in shock and was perplexed at the same time. With a shocked look he began to wonder if he really was Lu Sheng. He could not believe that the youthful-looking high school student had now become an elite military star. In the suit, Lu Sheng had a golden dragon medal, which was very difficult to obtain. Many generals spent their whole lives trying to get this medal but very few actually succeeded. Looking with a little more attention, Xie Pingnan saw the medal known as the Dragon Does Not Lie. With a calm look, Lu Sheng began to walk down the red carpet towards his parents. And seeing this, Xie Pingnan stood next to the bodyguards, adopted a military pose, put his hand near his forehead and saluted Lu Sheng with a military salute, and with a look full of surprise introduced himself as the governor of Dongning province and greeted General Qian of the military district and Commander Lu Sheng. At first, Lu Sheng kept walking as if nothing had happened, but upon hearing Xie Pingnan's voice, he turned to him and with a grateful smile thanked him for taking care of his family, since in reality he had been in the army for half a year. As the leaves were falling to the ground, Xie Pingnan, who was doing the military salute, was left speechless, and with a perplexed look said that there was no need to thank him, since after all this was his duty. Lu Sheng, who had one hand inside his pants pocket, with a serene look, extended the other hand towards him and with a serene look asked him to come inside to talk since it was cold outside. Xie Pingnan was somewhat surprised and began to shake his hand, explaining that Lu Sheng had just returned and must be tired from the trip, so he didn't want to bother him and would come to visit another day. His sister, who had her eyes closed, approached him and with a smile asked him that it was time to go home. Lu Sheng listened to his sister, closed his eyes, and started walking beside her. He decided not to insist any further and chose to invite old Xie for tea some other day. Xie Pingnan turned his head towards him and with a grateful look replied with an understood. After a while, Lu Sheng entered his house and his family began to walk beside him. Now that he had come, his mother asked him to stay for dinner. The father reached out to one side and asked the mother to stop talking since he wanted to enjoy a good drink with his son. King started jumping for joy as she wanted to see the gift that her brother had brought. General Qian, who was standing next to the bodyguards, closed his eyes and with a kind smile wished Lu Sheng a safe return. Xie Pingnan approached him and began looking at him with a confused expression, thinking that this guy was very strange. He lost his composure, and while a drop of sweat was falling from his cheek, he grabbed Qian by the clothes and with a serene look asked what the situation of the commander was. Upon seeing his expression, Qian panicked, started to sweat, and with a confused look asked what he was talking about. After several seconds, Qian realized why Xie Pingnan had asked him this question, and his eyes filled with surprise and he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that Lu Sheng was the martial genius that Xie Pingnan had mentioned to him before. Xie Pingnan began to shout and with a surprised look confirmed Qian's assumption. Upon hearing this, Qian's eyes filled with surprise. He tightly grabbed his hand, causing him to stop holding onto his clothes, and thought that this couldn't be true. Xie Pingnan fell silent. Qian approached him, placed his hand on his shoulder, clenched his fist tightly and his eyes filled with joy. According to him, Xie Pingnan had truly become powerful this time and asked him not to forget about him in the future. Xie Pingnan was stunned and his eyes filled with confusion. He did not know what was happening. After a while, Lu Sheng and his family entered their house and went to the main living room and sat on the sofa to chat. The father, who had one hand resting on his knee, extended the other towards him and with a surprised look asked how he had become a great figure of the military army. King, who had both hands resting on the sofa, approached him, and with a smile she asked how he had become the general of the military district. Lu Sheng, who was sitting next to her, began to observe them with a serene look, started to smile and remained silent. At that moment, his mother, who was holding a tray with a glass, began to approach him. She handed him the glass using her hand and her eyes filled with curiosity as she remembered that even the old Xie Pingnan had greeted Lu Sheng with respect. Lu Sheng took the glass and with a cheerful look thanked his mother. He brought the glass to his mouth, closed his eyes and began to drink, and explained that it was a long story. He decided to tell them about it later. Several seconds later, he opened his eyes and with a serious look revealed to his parents that now he had a more important matter to discuss with them. While he had one hand resting on his knee, he moved the glass away from his mouth, started to look at them, and while he was blushing revealed that he was in a relationship and had a girlfriend. This revelation left both Lu Sheng's parents and his sister in shock, who were left speechless. This was something they had not expected. They wanted to know how Lu Sheng had met his girlfriend. Lu Sheng had no choice but to tell the whole story, and half an hour later, he emptied the glass of water and left it on the table, explaining that more or less this is how everything happened. With a look full of joy, he explained that this time he had returned to take them to the military district so that they could meet his girlfriend in person. The mother turned her head towards them, extended her hand and thought that this was great. Next week she had vacation, so they could buy some things since they couldn't arrive empty-handed on the first visit. King put her hand on her cheek, started looking at the ceiling and remembered that she also had vacation so she could also go with them. The father put his hands on his hips, and upon seeing that the two of them could go, with a smile he decided to ask for permission at the supermarket in advance. While they were conversing among themselves, Lu Sheng remained listening silently without interrupting. He crossed his arms, closed his eyes and revealed that they were going to go tomorrow. Upon hearing this, both the mother and the father were left speechless and confused at the same time, as according to them it was too soon. Lu Sheng opened his eyes, started putting his hand inside his shirt, and with a sincere look explained that lately she had been quite busy and only had a few days off, and if they arrived late, she would not have time to be with them. He took out his mobile, made a video call with Snowy, brought the mobile closer to his parents and decided that it would be her who spoke with them. Snowy panicked, started to blush like a tomato, and explained that although this was a military area, they had shopping malls, supermarkets, restaurants, and even tourist spots. If they arrived tomorrow, they could spend the night, and she also asked them that they did not need to bring anything with them. Lu Sheng propped the mobile on a stand and left it on the table. The mother sat down, began to wave at Snowy with her hand, and with a pleasant smile decided that they were going tomorrow. The father, who had his hands on his waist, could not help but smile upon seeing that Snowy was a very cute girl. Thinking that his son's taste was as good as his own, King began to look at Snowy with curiosity. The mother stood up, grabbed the father by the ear, and with an angry look told him to stop saying nonsense. She decided to go prepare some things since no matter how good the products from outside were, nothing was better than what was made at home. The father started to regret it and with a sincere look asked her for forgiveness. The mother grabbed the father even more firmly by the ear and ordered him to start packing. While they were talking, Lu Sheng opened the living room door, began to observe them and could not help but smile and feel happy to be home again with his family. Without making a sound, he left the room and closed the door, leaning his back against it, and his eyes filled with seriousness, since convincing the family to visit the military district under the pretext of meeting the future daughter-in-law was the simplest and most effective way. With a serene look, he remembered that it had been some time since Lai Dai's plan had failed. If there were no surprises, Lian Su's next moves should be soon. He took out the jar from his pocket, began to observe it and came to the conclusion that for something as valuable as this tear of the saint, she would not give up so easily, since it was an object valued at 50 billion. Even for Lian Su, the wife of a martial master, it was something painful to lose. There was only one problem. Our boy didn't know what her next step was going to be. He started to touch his forehead with his finger and remembered that knowing this wasn't difficult. By just checking the system, he could find out Lian Su's next step in the plan. He sat on the floor, closed his eyes, kept calm, took a deep breath and began to concentrate, making a fluid energy and bubbles start to come out of his body. His eyes filled with surprise as he discovered that she was going to use the Black Magic Society. He began to imagine Lian Su smiling. It turned out that her next move was the Black Magic Society, the most mysterious organization of Huanian and Dark Star. While Lu Sheng's body was emitting a powerful energy, with a serious look he remembered that few knew their secrets. But in the resources of the Fireseed Depot there was nothing that remained hidden. The Black Magic Society had members who seemed to be insane, and most had robotic implants. It was an international terrorist organization with sectarian inclinations, obsessed with genetic modification experiments with exotic beasts. They called themselves demons. Among them was a man with purple hair who was very powerful, They used the name Greater Demon to designate the most powerful among them, inspired by the 70 and 2 Salmon demons. It was even said that there were 9th level martial artists among their ranks. He began to imagine a man in a military suit sitting in a chair holding a glass of wine and smoking a Marlboro. Behind the Society of Black Magic was the Shadow of the Lion Kingdom, which partly explained why this organization had managed to exist for so long. While Lu Sheng's body was surrounded by a golden energy, he began to look down, as unfortunately the information did not accurately describe which demon of the Black Magic Society had attempted to assassinate him. But now for him this did not matter. He threw the jar into the air, making it start to spin, and his eyes filled with confidence since in the future Lion Su was already dead, which proved that this attack was destined for failure. He gripped the jar tightly and his body began to emit suffocating golden energy, and his eyes filled with excitement as the battle with the martial master of the extreme path was also near. At the same time, on the outskirts of the city of Bei, a hooded man began to walk through a desolate area. This man had blonde hair, a tattoo on his eye, and wore an earpiece in his ear. With a calm look he informed that he had arrived at the location. He had heard that a great master from the top 10 had come for this. He asked his superior named Jay if he knew how important this target was. Jay asked the man not to be mistaken, as not only had one great master from the top 10 come. Upon hearing this, the man's eyes filled with surprise and he could not help but remain in shock and start sweating, asking if their target was the son of the martial master of the Dragon Kingdom. Jay was a man who had stitches at the corners of his lips. He was who was on call with the other man. With an evil smile he revealed that the target was even more valuable than the son of the martial master of the Dragon Kingdom. It was said that he was likely to become a martial master's Dawn Star according to the army. He began to imagine Lu Sheng from behind surrounded by intense flames. According to him, Lu Sheng had just turned 20 years old, and his combat ability was estimated at more than 30 stars, almost equal to the 10th Grand Master of their Black Magic Society. Upon hearing that Lu Sheng was 20 years old and already comparable to the 10th demon, the blonde man clenched his teeth tightly, began to sweat, and his eyes filled with excitement and fear. He started to imagine Lu Sheng standing with a bunch of hands reaching out towards him. He did not know who wanted a talent like Lu Sheng, who was an invaluable treasure for any country or organization, to die. Jay started to show an excited smile and explained to Jiros that it could not be said that any country or organization was united. For some people, Lu Sheng was a treasure, but for others, he was a poison. Jiros began to look sideways and with a confused look stayed thinking in silence. In the room where Jay was, there was a poster with Lu Sheng's photo nailed to the wall. He threw a knife at the poster, which split the poster into several pieces. They had to eliminate Lu Sheng before that poison became something deadly. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.